I'm a bit of a snapper.
Yep.
In layman's, let me explain. I mean, obviously, I'm quick to snap at everything. I can snap
No
at my kids.
way, are you?
Never would have thought so.
My poor wife cops it a lot. And general people around me, I don't realise how rude I am sometimes. And my wife, God love her, she always tells me, like, I really need to relax around other people because I don't realise how bad I really get sometimes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, sorry, I'm just asking. Like, I'm not trying to get free information out of you.
No, I think...
She's going to turn this podcast
because
into billable hours.
I'm a... How can you say? I'm a typical walk from the area. When it comes to health, mental health, it's how can I say, frowned upon?
You
Yeah.
probably
Not frowned
say
upon,
yeah.
but it's not something to consider a problem.
you don't
does
see
that
it as a
make sense?
masculinity
Yes.
issue.
Yeah.
It's a male thing.
Yeah, or even, of course, a male issue where it's like, shut up. Like, I constantly, I find myself telling myself to shut up and go, like, what are you complaining about, you little girl? Keep going.
Yeah, a lot of men do unfortunately have that very same mentality, which is why there are a lot of services out there that are solely geared towards men. Men's Shed is a really good one. Men's Line as well, which is a 24-hour hotline for men and the issues that they experience. But I've got the sort of background knowledge of you, Inan, so I can say that, part of your issue is probably...
Be nice.
It's just maybe cultural or the way you've grown up or...
Just calling you a fuckwit, bro.
Wow.
No,
You just mentioned
but-
we haven't seen each other for years and you start talking about
And then
me.
now all of a
Now
sudden
you
she
start
knows
talking
you.
about me like this.
She knows
No.
you.
Wow.
But in addition to
jokes.
what you've said, I would have to do far more assessment to gauge
Oh,
if
really?
if there are other issues. 'Cause
So
it's
there's
not
no
just
clear
the
cut, like,
anger.
you do this and that's it.
No, absolutely
You're going to be
not.
a nice, peaceful man.
Go to this spot, turn this light on, you're done.
If that was the case, my job would be
Can
so
I say
much
I'm
easier.
sick if I know that I'm doing the wrong thing? Like, for instance, people that get angry, if they don't realise that they're being angry and they're being these mean people, can they... And they don't think that they've got a problem. Is that an issue? Like, I know I'm doing the wrong. I feel very guilty afterwards, and then I end up apologising tenfold to my wife or my kids. because
Most people do. Most people know they're having an issue, and that's called insight. When you've got insight into what you're doing, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to stop just because you feel bad. You're probably going to blow up again at some point. The process of recovery is actually working to eliminate or reduce the behavior. Simply recognizing it doesn't mean that it's going to eliminate or reduce the behavior.
Really?
Yes.
So it's like counterintuitive to say,
exactly. You
shut the fuck up.
need to be able to actually change. Yeah.
That's a good
I
point.
want to actually bring up something. Look, I'm someone who I've gotten counselling before, and what I learned was, and it's a stereotype, I had this as well, was that I thought that recovery or getting better was like a one-way street. You just kept moving forward.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people don't realize is there's a lot of setbacks. So you might be
Absolutely.
great for 2 weeks and then you come back to where you were, maybe even worse than you were before you started counselling. Or I think a couple of word choices there from Inan, and I don't want to be putting words in your mouth, seemed like if I do this, what I fix. But it's really stepping forward and maybe taking 4 steps back and then stepping forward.
Yeah,
It's
of
a very
course.
gradual...
Like, I'll have one good week and then I'll be like, I haven't had an argument with the missus in a while, and then I swear...
Just start it for a
It's
sake
just-
of it.
I see, it's like I don't know, a placebo in a sense where it's like, subconsciously I've realised, you're going good, and then immediately stuff's
Yeah,
up.
it's definitely... setbacks are a part of the learning process of moving forward. May, I want to ask you a question, because early on you said that psychiatrists, they look after the psychiatric illnesses.
The medication side of
So is there like a
psychiatric illnesses.
line that you guys draw that psychologists don't look after this and psychiatrists don't come
that's
into
a
this
very good
field?
question.
Well, I think that line is defined purely by what our professions do, what the job description is, and psychiatrists, because they're trained in medicine, they operate from a completely different framework than a clinical psychologist or a psychologist would.
Mm-hmm.
So we are, if we get the doctor title, it's usually a doctor of philosophy. So we operate from...
Are you formally known as a doctor?
No, I haven't done my PhD. I'm not interested in that side of
Yeah.
things. Usually people do their PhD when they want to do academia. I'm not interested. I've done my master's, so I'm happy with the clinical side.
Sorry, this is a question that I'm very curious about. You know how you mentioned psychiatrists focus on the actual medicine side?
Yes.
Do you believe that certain substances, like for instance, I'll give you an example, Xanax, they've been prescribed to, or like mood change, things to make people happy, like antidepressants.
Yes.
Do they actually work, or are they bullshit?
Look, I have seen it work wonders for some people, and for others it has barely done anything.
How much of a placebo is it for people working?
That's a tough one to answer.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of research out there that does have very concrete evidence to suggest that there is a biological aspect to what antidepressants do. So they do increase serotonin levels, they do increase dopamine. Some people just biologically might not have that ability to generate their own serotonin. So having that boost with the antidepressants can really be helpful.
Yep.
So I do believe that for some people it works and for others it doesn't. It's like with any medication.
What's the chances of us getting a prescription for some Xanax?
We do not condone illegal drugs on this show, but
I don't prescribe.
I've actually learned something. I didn't know that antidepressants worked on serotonin levels and stuff like
Absolutely.
that. And I guess it's such a big push for people who are depressed, because I'm someone who's battled depression for a long point in my life.
Yeah.
And when you're depressed, the things that naturally release serotonin are things like physical activity, getting out.
You don't want to do.
You don't do when you're depressed. So
Yeah.
from that point of view, looking at it from a purely chemical or scientific point of view, you can see how raising serotonin levels in people who are depressed is going to help them. Maybe even just to kickstart them to start doing physical activity and doing stuff
Absolutely.
to eventually pull away from the drugs and do it naturally.
Exactly. So with antidepressants, the hint is in the name. The scientific name are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and that's only one type of antidepressant. There are other antidepressants that work on different receptors of the brain and target different things, but SSRIs are the ones that are prescribed most commonly and that have really good effects for people. If I've ever had clients that are quite challenging in their presentations because the depression is getting in the way of them actually engaging with the tools and the tasks that I give them. Let's say, for example, you gave a really good example of not wanting to get out of bed. Sometimes for my clients, just getting out of bed that day is the task, and they can't even do that because they're so kind of overwhelmed by their symptoms. So when we pair psychology with pharmacotherapy as well, your outcomes are going to be far greater than one or the other.
Yep.
For those particular cases that are quite intense or treatment resistant.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
I feel like we're in a counselling.
You trying to get free counselling here, bro?
No. This is, bro, to be honest,
You don't explore the option
I
of
don't
mental
explore
health
it, but
or
no,
mental
like
health
in
that
my
often.
own possession. If I can explain for myself, I've had many moments in my life in the last 5 years where I can say I've probably been depressed. I don't know whether I have, but I've always pushed on where it's like I don't know whether I've just scrunched it up and gone, you know what, don't worry about it, just keep moving, or whether it was, am I just mentally strong? I don't know. Or is it just do I numb everything out of my life to not give a fuck about it? You know what I mean? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yes,
Probably a mixture of all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
I don't know. Like you guys talk about depression, and I'm like, have I really been depressed? Like
It's
I don't
possible
know.
that you've been undiagnosed.
Yeah.
And this is exactly why men's health is so important, because what we know in the research, especially when it comes to suicide studies, men have more what we call completion rates of suicide and far more lethal attempts, because they're the ones that really aren't seeking the help.
Yeah.
So we see statistically we see men's suicide rates
Higher than
greater
women.
than women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to be walking into Maze Field here, but just what May said, imagine the task for that person is just to get out of bed. And you can just imagine the different issues that come with. Of course, there's different grades of depression. You can have mild, but if you can't get out of bed, I'm thinking that's like really, really bad depression.
Yep.
You got to consider this person hasn't gotten out of bed. Who knows when this person got out of bed last? You got to consider like malnutrition.
Yes.
Man, the posture problems this person's going to have from laying down all day and stuff like that. The depression just opens up a gateway of more health
Absolutely.
and mental health problems.
I've had people who haven't showered in days and weeks. I've had people who haven't been able to feed themselves properly. You know, and the issues that come with that. You know, job loss, financial strain, relationship strain. You know, a whole array of things that come with that. And you can imagine, you know, bringing it back to men, for example, like you were saying, Inan, you just, you know, might have had these moments in your life where you probably just wanted to stay in bed, but you
I did, but
soldiered
there was just
on.
something in
Yeah.
my mind going, no, you
Yeah,
can't.
you
Just keep
went
going.
on.
Like, don't get me wrong, I don't suffer silently. Honestly, I'm gonna be honest about this. It's not like I go home or like I'm in my car sometimes and I'm just crying there. Like, not to make fun of this or anything, but it's just like, whether it'd be my wife also giving me support, or whether it's just the love of my kids. I mean, certain factors, you know, like family, friends. You know, I'm fortunate to have loving friends, you know, that care. But it's like, I don't know whether I'm lucky in that sense where I've got the support where those
Yes.
others don't.
That is such
You know what I mean?
that is such an important point. And the demographic of people that I work with, the majority of them don't have support. They don't have friends. They don't have family because they've burned those bridges inadvertently.
Yeah.
When you work with people who have sensitive temperaments like personality disorders, they don't know how to manage or control intense emotions. And you can imagine, you know, people around them are probably not going to be able to deal with that constant heightened level of emotionality. So they don't have support. And, you know, when they come to me, it's actually really, really difficult to try and elicit a name from them, from someone they can put down on what we call a care plan, for me to call if I needed to. So it always comes down to something as basic as just the GP.
Yeah.
So can you imagine, like, if you walked into my clinic, you'd probably be able to rattle off a lot of names of people who could support you.
I come from a background in teaching, man. I don't know if you can call it like a mini psychologist in the classroom.
Yes.
But I've taught children who've come from abusive backgrounds, who've come from, you know, broken families and stuff like that. And a lot of these people who later grow up to be your patients as adults, because they've never really had a strong relationship, or they've had, you know, a parent who's walked out or something like that,
Yes.
they actually self-sabotage these relationships.
Absolutely.
So they take
Yes.
away these relationships themselves because they're like, hey, it's going to get ruined anyway. At least let me have control of when it gets ruined, and let's get it over and done with, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big part of what I do in terms of treatment of you know, personality disorder. What you're talking about is people having a fear of abandonment. And usually when people have a fear of abandonment, it is a sense of control of, well, I'm going to leave you first so you don't leave me and you don't break my heart first. I'm going to take control of this. And that, you're absolutely correct in saying that one part of why people can develop any, you know, psychological illness does have to do with attachment with parents, or, you know, trauma. Trauma's a really big one.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's just the tip of the iceberg, but it's a really important point to know that having strong family ties or strong support, however that looks, even if that's a friend, can really be the difference between someone recovering and staying stagnant for a long time.
So would you consider, obviously, these people that don't have proper relationships or support per se with others? Would you put that as a massive factor in terms of their mental health state?
Yes.
Like, would that like is that like a solution in a sense? Like, if you say you just say to them,
it's part of the solution.
Yeah.
It can be part of the solution, but you can. It doesn't. It's not a hard and fast requisite for getting better. It just helps.
okay,
It definitely helps significantly when you've got a support unit around you, especially when you've got people who might be suicidal. Sometimes having that one person in their life is the reason that they don't take their own life.
Yeah.
Pets are another important one. Pets are really, really important to people. And I've had a lot of people say, no, I'm not going to kill myself because I've got my dog. Yeah, I've got my dog and I love my dog. My dog is my life. And that has been incredibly powerful for a lot of people. And for me as a clinician to sort of draw on that.
Mm-hmm. So
Listen, I'm just here listening to you.
I'm intrigued. I mean,
Sorry, I'm trying to get as much advice as I can because
I know this is really expensive.
I'm trying to save money here.
she came to you. Just obviously, if it reaches out to one person who listens to us, it's going to make a massive difference. So, and I know that you go on a case by case basis, but just generally speaking to people who are, depressed, what is some advice that you'd like to give to them, from a psychologist's point of view that could help them?
The first thing that I would say is reach out. Whether you're reaching out to, your GP, you're reaching out to Lifeline, you're reaching out to friends, reach out. That's the first step. And it can be a really dark place where people might feel like there's no point and there's no point in reaching out or there's no recovery. But all you need is just a little bit of hope and, a bit of hard work when you really want to unpack everything. But reach out. That's the first step.
Mm-hmm. Curiously, what's the biggest issue people face? Like, what's most common? Like, what would be the average problem, like the main problem everyone goes for?
This is a tough one because I work in a niche area, so I'm always seeing personality disorders. But from what I know from the literature, it is depression and anxiety, and it is on the incline, and it's starting younger and younger as well.
Really?
Yes, I've even with personality disorders, we've got 8, 9, 10-year-olds who are trying to take their lives.
You mentioned personality disorders. Like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about like
personality disorders are, there's many of them.
Is it like that, like the prime
I know
example
where
would
you're
be
when boys want to be girls.
Irene.
Oh, okay.
You know how he goes through the split personality?
No, you're thinking of dissociative identity disorder, which we had this conversation
Is that actually
earlier.
I thought that was just for comedic purposes.
No, it's
so
a
there's
real
actual
thing.
individuals out there like that.
Yes,
Really?
yes.
Wow.
There are individuals who struggle with multiple self states.
I'm only laughing because you realise in that movie, like he sucks up all the shit the town shits on him, and then he just finally that personality, or the dickhead in him, he just comes in and it's like, nah, and he changes. I feel like that too sometimes, in the sense where it's like, nah, don't beep at this guy. Nah, it's not worth it. And then it's like, all right, so it's built up a little bit. So then another guy cuts me off. No, don't relax. Oh, you're about to punch the steering wheel, no. And then the fourth guy fucking cuts you off, and it's just like bang, bang. Like, you're ready to get out and start brawling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, would that be the same thing?
No.
That's fucking anger management.
I think, that's anger management.
I'm
Or is it just
thinking-
built up frustration?
I'm thinking
just change the names.
this is possibly a case of intermittent explosive disorder. I don't know.
So you have diarrhea,
or it might help you actually. But you look, without assessing you further, I can't.
I'm just.
I'm interested and I want to, but I don't want to do it on a podcast where
Let them hear it, though.
your
everyone's got a fair idea.
your vulnerabilities will be drawn out.
It's more like you coming into the podcast at Inan today, and tomorrow you're coming as George from from Brisbane.
Sorry, I know. I've always been interested in psychology. I think psychology is important, but I've never taken the leap to go, you know what, I'm going to research this.
And
like,
you didn't do Tony Soprano style?
No, like I've always had the fair idea as to what it is. That's why it was like, psychiatrist, psychologist. I didn't know there was a difference between the two, you know what I mean?
Is that the most common question you get asked?
No, it is very...
Oh, you're a psychologist.
It's very common, and people don't know that as a clin psych, I don't prescribe medication. I can... I've done a bit of pharmacology in my training, but it's not enough to prescribe. It's enough to maybe speak to a psychiatrist or a GP and suggest a medication review for, XYZ reasons. So I can definitely identify when something might need medication. But I don't prescribe, and I work I'm a human behavioralist. That's what clin psychs do. They work on human behavior, and trying to shift those patterns of behavior and thought.
Ethical in asking you what's the strangest thing you've been a part of?
We sort of did get into this off air, which is trying not to go into past, current, or
sorry, my
cases.
curiosity is
So,
getting the better of me. I understand.
It does
I
make
mean, if
sense.
you don't want to
No,
answer it,
it's-
don't. Like, I completely
it's-
respect that.
Look, I think I have an ethical obligation to my clients.
I mean, we're not
and
listing any names, but I'm sure
I know. No, yes, I know. I can definitely de-identify stuff, but
you can tell me after.
from like
No, joking.
from a moral and ethical perspective for myself, I know that if I was seeing a psychologist
Sorry, I apologize,
and
actually. I feel bad.
I came across their
Should feel bad.
podcast
I do feel bad.
and they were talking about me, I'd be really upset.
Yeah,
And that could
yeah, I
probably stop
understand.
someone
It was a
getting
stupid
help.
question, I understand.
No,
but
it's
it's
not
just
a stupid-
curious.
it's fine,
It's
yeah.
purely just curious.
Everyone asks me.
Yeah.
Everyone, and I do share things that are de-identified, but I do that in a more private setting.
So within your field, do you think social media plays a heavy element in this now?
Absolutely, 100%.
Because a lot of people play that factor of the I guess the term is keyboard warrior. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
People trying to pretend to be something that they're not, considering. It's like, no, it's more along the lines of, especially when it comes to sensitive topics, say politics or when it comes to like a very depressing, not a depressing, but a very controversial topic, people tend to be able to give their views on social media because they can't actually do it physically in front of people themselves. Do you notice that more within your field now?
Oh, yeah. So I actually did, back in my honours year, which was in 2015, I did a whole presentation on that concept, which is people who can say anything under the anonymity of the internet.
I used to be like that.
Would never
Still
say
are
it
like
in
that.
person.
No, I'm not as abusive as I used to be. Like, I
Oh, wow.
Okay. That makes it all right.
no.
I'm not as abusive under a different Facebook name.
No. I've always been myself. Like, I've never hid under a fake profile or anything, but I've always been that, I slowed down from instead of calling it like countering their argument and then calling him an idiot at the end. I've stopped the idiot part. So it's just like, I'm just countering their argument. So it's just having a civil discussion,
I don't think there's anything wrong whether it's physical or via social media to have a conversation with someone, but it's different on social media now because you have people, it's literally pretending to be someone they're not, or pretending that I can't say they have a power. What's the word? That they have, like, they're pretending that they have this strength that they can actually say only online. They will not be able to say this physically to someone, especially if you when you got certain people that is obviously depicted in Hollywood, lives in their mother's basement and they're writing to some guy who's a steroid jockey or something like that. This is never going to happen.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I personally just believe that social media aspect is, there's no recovery from that because everything is happening literally like this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And people are receiving responses that much quicker now in this day and age, and it's only going to get quicker, that before they can even seek help, that the damage is already done.
Yes.
So again, that's just my view, but yeah, you're going into the depths of it.
Yeah. I mean, there's absolutely evidence to suggest that people have a false sense of security when they are in an online environment because they can hide behind fake profiles, or they feel that they can be malicious towards others under the guise of whatever fake profile that they've got going, or even their actual profile. Like, some people are, I've spent many nights scrolling through comment sections of Facebook and Instagram, and I'm just thinking to my psychology brain is going crazy because I'm thinking, would these people actually say this stuff in person?
Look,
and I know that they wouldn't.
Yeah, sometimes it's not, in my opinion anyway, I don't think it's intentional, because when we think about saying something and hurting somebody, emotions are such visual things, right? So if you're saying something and you're not seeing how this person responds, how their face changes, how a tear swells up in their eye, I don't think you have complete understanding of the damage that your words could be causing this person.
Absolutely. My belief is that our most powerful weapon as humans are our words. And we need to be
that's
very
so true.
careful
And I suck at that.
with how
Sticks
we
and
use it.
stones,
I'm
bro.
so sorry,
Sticks and
babe.
stones.
Nah, my missus cops it a lot.
I think that just hit Inan right in the heart.
Yeah,
there,
okay.
that
See, that's what
Words
I mentioned.
hurt people?
No, no.
What do you mean?
no, that's what I mean by
Well,
like.
this is a new concept.
I know. I make those bad decisions where it'll be I'm angry or abusive, but I feel extremely guilty afterwards. But I still continue to do it. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Even though I recognize that there is a problem there, I continue to do that. You know, it's just like, anyways.
I'm just saying you can book me at fortitudepsychology.com.au.
We're not doing product placement here.
Sorry.
Now, so
Excuse me.
Now,
Just far to edit that out.
just to make sure that we do give something to the viewers as well. So everything that regarding men's health or Lifeline, we'll add links into the YouTube
Yes.
description.
And
below.
we'll get a
If you
full
need-
list off
There
mail.
you go, like that. We're all doing this stuff now. Okay. So
Fucking
after all this, so psychology, is it a myth? I'm kidding. Amy, you were going first, man.
Oh no, I was gonna hit a topic, but we've moved on from it.
No, we're still.
Do you
I
think-
think we can actually go into psychology
it's,
quite
it's,
often.
It's the social media aspect of
Yeah.
it. And look, and May brought up this interesting point. She said that, psychologists are getting involved in people's lives a lot earlier. We're seeing it in young children and stuff
Yes.
like that. And my experience, once again, I'm just drawing on my experience as a teacher. You know, when we went to school and we all went to school together,
Yeah.
Yes.
bullying was physical, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
You hit somebody.
Nah,
it was verbal.
also verbal.
Yeah,
It
it
was
was
verbal,
verbal,
yeah.
right?
Oh, okay.
It was like, oh, you're dumb, you're ugly, you're blah,
Oh,
blah.
man.
The biggest problem we faced with bullying as teachers was over social media.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really?
And it's so hard to chase up because fake accounts are made, right? Messages are sent, accounts are deleted within minutes.
Yes.
You
That's
don't
right.
even know how to
Just
trace
looking back at school, I realized what a traumatic and like, you talk about PTSD, but I think as a school problem, like in terms of an individual, as a teenager, like I'll put my perspective there on my experience, like there was many obstacles I faced, whether it be puberty, like trying to be cool or trying to talk, you're trying to socialize with people that are trying to socialize. Like it's just this jungle effect in this school. And like the point I'm trying to make, it's traumatizing in the sense where it's like mentally you're just flustered. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think growing up and high school and schooling can be really difficult for some people, but yes, like some people.
Like I'm sure you can agree. We both went to the same school. How
It was
bad we
tough.
have? Yeah.
It was tough.
I look back, man. I saw a lot of crazy stuff.
Well, look, you ran with some pretty tough crowds. I was a bit of a nomad. I was, and mostly I stuck with the what you guys lovingly called us as the nerds,
Courtyard crew.
the courtyard crew. But I used to kind of go between all of the crowds. But I feel like you particularly
we
would
were
have.
just a bunch of wannabes.
Yeah, but
Like that's what I mean. It's like you're
kids
trying to
make
portray
poor
that image
decisions.
of we're gangster, we're this and that. Whereas we went home, we were like little kids. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Like
Let me try something here because I feel like I have a controversial question, but sort of also relates to our obviously times in high school. From a psychological perspective, do you think that people have, I can't say this in a way without sounding like a fuckwit.
I know what you're saying.
Do you think that people's mental states have been getting weaker and weaker as it's been going? Like, I'm not saying it as in...
So you're talking about resilience. So are
Yeah.
people less
Yeah,
resilient in this
in
day and age?
comparison, can I just add to that? Back in the days, I'm talking my grandfather days. Were they just tougher than us, or were they just they weren't
Or
occur,
they held it more.
You know what the difference is?
or they just didn't realize?
You know what the difference is? This is just my personal opinion, and I link it to psychological roots. But I think that back in our grandparents' days and even our parents' days, there was less online connectedness. All of that stress didn't follow you around the way it follows you now. So when you went home from school, you went home and the bullying stopped for a period of 12 hours until you went to school the next day. Whereas now we've got people who are getting bullied round the clock. It follows you and you just don't get a break.
And And also, your public image is on display 24 hours a day.
Absolutely. Reputations are far more important to people. I mean, you've got kids these days aspiring to be social media influencers, which is fine, but with that comes...
It's not fine. You're all overrated.
With that comes, a lot of risk. And I think that's the fundamental difference. But because we're so acclimated now to this societal world that we're in, we don't actually think about that as being maybe one of the most fundamental changes from when our parents were growing up compared to how your kids are growing up and how we grew up.
But do you think that, how you said that the break period exists? So like, I know online social media continues pretty much around the clock bullying, if that's what I want to call it. But do you think that the dealing of the stress, people nowadays try to attach it to a name themselves because they need to feel comfortable that they are attached to something? Does that make sense? Like,
do you mean like labeling
being
what they're
labeled?
feeling?
Say like ADD.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I probably back in the days, I'll probably 100%. Like if I was a kid now, I'm definitely chucked into that topic. Like definitely, I don't pay attention.
100%.
Yeah. See, even a psychologist.
I mean, it probably still till this day.
Probably because I lose interest very.
If
so
Ritalin
about
puts you
another
to
topic. No.
if Ritalin puts you to sleep, do you have ADHD?
If Ritalin puts you to sleep.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't.
I'm just joking.
I can't
I'm
imagine
just
that
joking.
Ritalin would put anyone to sleep.
But what I'm trying to say is, as in, like, I feel like nowadays people are trying to fit into a category so that they're happy.
Yeah. So I think like what I'm getting from you is people feel better and more justified when they've got a label to what's going on rather than simply being a human that might be having a tough day or a tough few days or a tough few weeks. I think when you start slapping labels on yourself without seeking the appropriate help, that's where the danger lies. And that's where you get, these pop psychology terms, everyone calling maybe a fleeting moment of sadness depression, or a few days laying in bed depression, when it's just you're actually human. At the end of the day, we do suffer.
Go through tough times.
We go through tough times.
Days,
it's not necessarily. We don't have to pathologize that. But if you've gone and gotten a diagnostic label from someone who's assessed you and has the qualifications to do that, then I would be less inclined to question that too much.
Do you reckon professionals are not hesitant, but they're quickly just to
put a label?
To put a label on someone?
I have seen both sides of that coin, where I have had to undo labels that did not exist or no longer fit.
Is that because they were dodgy?
Not because they were dodgy. I think
we're just calling out psychologists.
No,
You're all dodgy.
it's like
I'm not talking just about psychologists.
We'll include all their links on the below.
I'm not talking just about psychologists. I'm talking about like general, the wider networks. Like we've got our doctors, we've got our nurses, we've got social workers, OC therapists, all of these allied health staff that are involved in a patient's care at any given time, and they might sort of put something in the patient's file that's suggestive of, a personality disorder or a depressive disorder. And they haven't gone through the appropriate assessment avenues before putting that in the client's file. And I've had to go and undo that. I'm of the belief that I don't stick labels on my patients unless it exists and they need it. So when you've got people slapping labels on other people, those labels follow them around, and it can be detrimental if it's not the correct label. So yes, I've seen both sides of the coin, where people are quick to put a label on and where people just don't because they're afraid of the stigma. There is still a lot of stigma around personality disorders and mental health in general. Yes. And it's people are just too afraid to have a human conversation with another person sitting in front of them in the room, and say, look, I think this is what's going on.
Everyone's a show off. It comes back to social media, plain and simple.
It can.
Inan has just solved psychology.
I'm not solving, but I'm just presenting.
Anymore.
I'm presenting the actual problem. Like, I used to put up the good things in my life, but I realized, I asked myself, do you put the bad stuff up? you know, like you realize how fake social media is, and like you mentioned earlier, social media, it's 24/7. You don't want to show people your shit side. You know what I mean? It's always got to be the good. You know, oh, I'm having Macca's. Oh, you know, if I can't afford Macca's, I don't put it up. You know what I mean? Just like general problems.
Well,
like
that's what
that.
I refer when you guys say social influencers.
But I mean, yeah,
They only show, look what I'm having, look what I'm doing, look what I'm
exactly.
having.
And this is exactly what plays into people's, you know, mental health, is that they are only seeing the good sides and they forget that there's a flip side to that. And I think we've all fallen into that trap. Like, you know, when people are posting up, you know, their travel photos or whatever it is, you don't see that maybe, you know, 12 hours before that they had just missed the bus or missed the flight and they've been, you know, like stressed or whatever.
I'm the irony. I share that point.
Yeah.
It's like, man, fuck, I missed the bus. Like, I'm not going to send you a photo of the Taj Mahal. It's like, oh, man, I missed the bus.
I'm just going to hear my problems.
It's like, yeah, after all that, he's a beach, you know, fair enough. But like, no, look, I think you hit on the nail on the head with what you guys were saying regarding the social media aspect, which is if we only see the positive, therefore we reflect that our life should be aiming for that, if that makes sense.
But at the same time, I think there's another issue of always pretending to be happy.
100%.
Yeah, of course.
Or, oh, we're so happy we're doing this. Or we're so happy we're doing that. So what's that?
Is that wrong to pretend?
Pretending you're happy? Yeah, of course it is. Because if we're talking about mental health in men especially, bro, a lot of the time, men in general, we like to just brush stuff under the rug and pretend we're happy. And you know what? When you look at people like, I'm going to give an example like Robin Williams.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's a comedian. He looks like the happiest person. The guy committed suicide because in his real life, he was unhappy. But he was always showing to the world, I'm happy, I'll make you laugh. But at the end of the day, he was a complete wreck himself. I would say that the worst thing you can do as a result of depression is to take your own life. That's the end. That's where it all finishes. And if you've gotten down to that point, you're obviously unhappy. We as men pretend we're happy too much. And we don't actually sit and think, what am I actually feeling? Am I happy because I'm outside here, or am I like trying to escape something? Is there like something hidden behind? Is there a motive behind what I'm doing? Like, until you see a psychologist, and I'm gonna massive shout out to psychologists here. Until I sat down and started to reflect how I felt when I woke up during the day, when this happened, what triggered what, you don't actually realize how much you're actually pretending and you're putting on this fake smile.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's a massive issue, pretending to be happy, putting it on social media, going, hey guys, look how happy we are, we're at the beach. But he's at home and he's depressed and, you know, he's not eating because he's not feeling well.
Yeah.
I'll give you the easiest way to know how social media is fake. Take your birthday off.
Yeah.
Take your birthday date off Facebook.
Yeah.
And you know what?
That's what I've done.
Still remember yours.
That's what I've done.
Same
That
day.
doesn't count.
But
No, but I'm fortunate to have friends that know that a particular date is my birthday.
well, if that's the case, you guys aren't my friends.
I don't even
Half
know
of
who
my
you are.
birthday is my name.
I don't know.
May the
There's
6th.
16th.
16th. I knew there was, and Veronica's 9.
Yes.
9th.
No.
Ninth.
April.
April.
May,
yeah.
September.
My bad.
May, September.
No, I generally say like, because you'll have people that say you got 500 friends. I guarantee you're getting probably 20, 30 messages max.
Yeah.
What? So I've taken my birthday off social media, and I will only get messages from the girls, and my family.
And that's what I mean. And compare that to the number of people that could be potentially on your list.
Yeah.
Compare that to how many flowers you used to get on your birthday at high school.
I know, and the teddy bears. I've still got all of them. I've got all of those giant teddy bears that you guys got me. But
Yeah, the camera's still working.
The issue, the issue is that when you have people who start putting a lot of the value on things like that, like, you know, oh, I didn't get people messaging me for my birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Then that's an
Shallow.
issue. If that was the case, I wouldn't be here today because none of you remembered my birthday ever for the last however many years.
I forgot who you were for the last 2 years.
Exactly.
Sorry,
So-
were you again?
But
She's a
What was your
psychologist we
name?
hired.
well, I expect my bank deposit.
Look, mate, it's been a great episode. See you in 10 years.
Thank God.
Nah, look, it's been a good it's a good session on psychology. Look, again,
Yes,
you hit
thank
a lot
you.
of things that that again, from a male perspective, you don't hear much from, especially considering. And another thing to play into could be, again, we look at all our jobs, the industries that's in. We've got logistics and we've got construction. Two of a very
Just
harsh,
male
dominated.
male dominated. And,
Yes.
and
I love it.
and,
It's so fun.
And saying I'm sad or I'm going through this and this and this, it's pretty much go to Bunnings and pick up cement. You know,
Oh, you don't need to, but
Yeah.
on a construction site, the bag's not far. But it's really true, because the second that you start to even mention feelings, right? Oh, my finger hurts. Oh, stop whinging.
Pussy.
Yeah.
Like, stop whinging.
Literally.
Like,
Yeah.
It's like, and we're talking about how men find it hard to talk about their emotions and to talk about how they're feeling. We shut each other down before we can do it.
Absolutely. And you guys talk about the industries that you work in, and they're very male dominated. They're you don't show any signs of what you guys seem to be repeatedly calling weakness. And you guys are a great example of really poorly ingrained culture.
Just through our word choices.
Are you calling me weak?
Exactly. Well,
No, but
we're gonna
just-
have to do something about him.
just through our word choices, you can see the stigma that's attached to it for us.
Exactly. And
How dare you.
you were saying if there was anything I could share, and I can share a story because I think it's very
No,
important
this is purely
to,
joke. Like, I
to
don't actually
men's
mean
health, and what you guys may or may not have experienced. But I used to work for a crisis hotline, so people who were suicidal would call, and I would take these calls. And I distinctly remember this one gentleman calling me from his office at work, and he explained what he did, and he was in a quite high up position, pretty much a CEO at the time. Seemed to have a nice nuclear family. Everything seemed in order. But he said to me, I've got a bottle of pills in my drawer and I'm feeling very tempted to take them right now, all of them. And I want to kill myself and end it right here, right now. I've shut all the blinds to my office and I've locked the door. And, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like, I must preface this with the fact that I was very junior in my training at that
It
time.
just begs the question, like, why didn't they teach me about this?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Well, I remember thinking after, and I think I was in my 4th year of training at this point, thinking, oh my God, even big CEOs aren't immune to
You're not
this.
taught to deal with stress or, like...
No. And this is a person who from the outside you would think has everything in order.
Mm-hmm.
He's in a really good job, very good position, great family from the sounds of it, but is so gravely unhappy and in pain that the only way that he could think of getting away from it was to end his life. And every phone call that I got from males on this crisis hotline were very lethal descriptions of how they wanted to kill themselves. So I can say firsthand that men definitely struggle with mental health more than we realize. You never know what the guy next to you is struggling with.
I have 2 questions for you, May. First of all, that crisis hotline that you used to work with, is this still an active service?
It absolutely is.
Who can these people contact in a crisis like that?
Lifeline.
Lifeline.
Yes.
The other question I have is as well, look, I think it gets misunderstood as a cry for attention when people are like, I'm going to kill myself.
Absolutely.
So from a psychological point of view, why does one who is thinking of committing suicide in the last moments before doing it reach out for help?
Because I think most people, in my experience of when people have actually reached out, is that they're looking for a glimmer of hope. And I think when they have second thoughts, that's where we jump in and we're like, okay, we need to try and find reasons that this person can stay alive, or reasons that we can give to these people to hold on just a little bit longer. There's a part of them that doesn't want to end their life. It's the ending of the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And the only escape for some people that they can see is through suicide. it's not through the ending of, they want to end the pain. It's not the ending of the
So
life.
there's still how do I say it? There's still a bit of fear in them that
Absolutely.
there's going to be an ending, but they're just looking for a reason to stop themselves from doing what they want to do.
Yes, because if you imagine the most painful, moment in your life, and some people have many of those painful moments that just keep going on and on and on, and they feel like there's no way out, and they just want that to end, but they don't actually know how to stop it.
What kind of moments are we talking about? Like, are these general, like?
This can be anything. What might be tolerable for you and you're resilient with, someone might not be able to cope with that.
Understand with. Like, I don't want to sound like an asshole and go, these people need to toughen up. Like, I'm not trying to advocate that or anything, but I really am struggling to understand how they lead up to that point, that moment. You know what I mean? Like, I've thought about not suicide, but I've like, bro, it would just be so much easier if it just
ended.
Yeah.
If it just ended.
Yeah.
And
you know what I mean? And it's just more of a just frustration.
It's
of course.
It's a scary thought that
Of
even
course.
is. But I want to, in this gentleman's situation, imagine the responsibility that this guy has on him.
Yeah.
Choices he's made
Yes.
may have impacted on other people's lives. So there may be people who've, 10,000 people who've lost their lives. There could be guilt.
Yes.
But a lot of these people come with conditions that it's nature and nurture that they grew up with, and this is like 20 years that he's we're talking about bottling up. You bottle up for 20 years, but there's a point where you can't bottle up anymore. And that's when you lose complete control, because you're like, you don't know what to do. You've never been taught to deal with these emotions, these thoughts. So I think, I don't know if May can back me up, but the higher the responsibility that someone has, whether it's you're a father, you're this, you're that, the more prone you are to feeling these feelings or these thoughts.
Yes, especially if you've already got those biological vulnerabilities. Maybe you've got a family history of depression, or you've got you're taking a medication that might affect your mental state. It's a very intricate interplay of a number of things, based on the individual, based on the circumstances that person is in, and a situation that might upset you might not upset them, and vice versa. Everyone is different. I haven't come across any of my clients who are exactly the same, or so similar that you can't tease them apart. We've got fundamental differences, and I think those differences are what ultimately decide how we tolerate situations.